All right. We are on rule 19, or I'm sorry, chapter 19, rules for applicants. And this is the last chapter. It's kind of long, so it might be broken up into 2 days for us, but we'll see how it goes. And what all comes up as we're reading. So, and these it does have the rules, and I'm interested to see again because it's been a while if these rules match up with the rules from a treatise on white magic, and that may be the case where they're expanded on in white magic. So this is going to be interesting. Okay. There are certain aphorisms and injunctions which the applicant for initiation needs to study and obey. There is a great distinction between the terms aspirant to the path and applicant for initiation. He who aspires and strives towards discipleship is in no way pledged to the same specific attitude and discipline as is the applicant for initiation. And he can, if he so choose, take as long as he desires in the treading of the probationary path. The man who sees initiation is in a different position, and having once made application, has to bring his life under definite rule and the strict regime, which is only optional to the disciple. Because we hear these terms being used, and it takes a long time to really differentiate what all these things mean. And then at times you can don't stress it. How about that? Just let's read this one more time. He who aspires and strives towards discipleship is not pledged to the same specific attitude as the applicant for initiation. So here's the turn between an aspirant to the path and an applicant, which we generally call an aspirant, right? So there's a he who desires for a specific attitude. So the disciple is not pledged to the same specific attitude and discipline as the applicant for initiation. So there's that. And by applicant, like we said, we're talking about, and generally in all these books, it's aspirant. So these rules are 14 in number and are gathered from a series of instructions compiled for those who seek to take the first initiation. Okay, well that does change the game, being that it's for the first initiation. I would expect these rules to be, but just putting it out there before we get into it too deeply. Many have already taken the first initiation and are moving towards the second. However, many are seeking to take the first initiation also. And that would imply physical plane rules to get over the top of the physical plane, you could say. All right, rule 1, let the disciple search within the heart's deep cave. If there the fire burns bright, warming his brother, yet heating not himself, the hour has come for making application to stand before the door. When love for all beings, irrespective of who they are, irrespective of who they may be, is beginning to be a realized fact in the heart of a disciple, and yet nevertheless love for himself exists not, then comes the indication that he is nearing the portal of initiation and may make the necessary preliminary pledges. These are necessitated before his master's hands in his name as a candidate for initiation. If he cares not for the suffering and pain of the lower self, if it is immaterial to him whether happiness comes his way or not, if the sole purpose of his life is to serve and save the world, and if his brother's need is for him of greater moment than his own, then is the fire of love irradiating his being, and the world can warm itself at his feet. This love has to be a practical, tested manifestation, and not just a theory, nor simply an impractical ideal and a pleasing sentiment. It is something that has grown in the trials and tests of life, so that the primary impulse of the life is towards self-sacrifice and the immolation of the lower nature. So in this, there are many lives living kind of inside of this thing, inside of this paragraph here. And it's up to us to recognize that and really move towards getting in the flow with it, because it may, some things may not make real good sense until we do. And meaning, we're not out for our own life, so it doesn't matter what happens to us. How about that? And if we still think that it does, then we're probably wrong. Rule 2, when application has been made in triple form, then let the disciple withdraw that application and forget it has been made. So that's pretty cut and dry there. Forget it has been made. Herein lies one of the initial tests. The disciple's attitude of mind must be that he cares not whether he takes initiation or not. Selfish motive must not enter in. Only those applications which reach the master through the energy engendered through pure altruistic motive are transmitted by him to the recording angel of the hierarchy. Only those disciples who seek initiation because of the added power to help and bless that it confers will find a response to their plea. These careless of initiation receive not the occult accolade, and those anxious through selfishness or curiosity to participate in the mysteries enter not the door but remain knocking outside. Those who are keen to serve, those who are weighted down with the sense of world need and the personal responsibility thereby awakened, and who have fulfilled the law, knock and meet with response and make application which meets the recognition. They are the ones who send forth a cry for added power to aid, which penetrates to the ear of those who silently wait. This is a very interesting thing. In the beginning, it talks about the disciple's attitude of mind must be that he cares not whether he takes initiation or not. I want to say that, it's probably very natural initially, and we should, for a bit, as we're reading, probably, discover where we're at in this. There is, it's important to know ourselves. And so once we figure it out, though, like what, if we're an aspirant for an initiation, for an applicant, if we're a disciple, when you figure these things out, whether we're working with inside of one of those initiations and we're to serve, and we're the disciple and we're doing the work that is commensurate with it, then there's different kind of ways to look at it, but we don't need to once we see it and we recognize it, we don't look back. We don't care whether or not we're going to take an initiation, because by this point we've realized that this is the eternal now, and whether we take it in this life or in some other it makes no difference. Right. So is there, and if that may help you rest in that, it makes no difference. Yes, if something happens, that's great, and it may aid our, our ability your ability to serve, but it's not something to stress on, because everything works out exactly appropriately. That doesn't mean to also go the other way and just pretend like, these things don't exist, or think that, there's definitely was a phase for myself, honestly, that I thought, well, I can do whatever I want. And that was it must have been a Neptune phase or something, a Neptune transit, I've had more since, but differently, but I felt very free and carefree and careless, and you learn the hard way that you can't just do whatever you want. There are rules. You learn that there's rules. There's a difference between laws and rules too, and those are explained in some of the books. This isn't meant to be something very harsh. This is meant to get us to the next level of consciousness. It's a big deal. So we try to follow these. Rule 3, triple the call must be, and long it takes to sound it forth. Let the disciple sound the cry across the desert, over the sea, and through the fires which separate him from the veiled and hidden door. Under this symbology comes to the disciple the injunction to make the desert of the physical plane life to blossom like the rose, so that from the garden of the lower life may arise those sounds and scents and a vibration strong enough to cross the intervening space between it and the portal, to still the restless waters of the emotional life, so that in their limpid, still expanse, that portal may be reflected, and the lower life mirror forth the spiritual life of the indwelling divinity. To pass through the fiery furnace, those motives, words, and thoughts which are the mainspring of activity and have their origin on the mental plane. Wait a second here. Let's go back. To pass through the fiery furnace, those motives, words, and thoughts which are the mainspring of activity and have their origin upon the mental plane. When these three aspects, and I missed the section before that because there's a semicolon there, so I apologize. I didn't read that exactly properly. But they're just talking about the words that are mirrored forth from the spiritual life and the mental plane, and it's going to be different, and they need to be more clear cut. And our emotional life should be limpid and pure by that point. When these three aspects of the manifesting ego and God within are brought under control, coordinated, and utilized, then even unconsciously to himself will the voice of the disciple be heard, demanding the opening of the door. When the lower life upon the physical plane is fertilized and the emotional stabilized, and the mental transmuted, then naught can prevent the latch upon that door being lifted and the disciple passing through. Only synchronous vibration to that which lies the other side of the door produces its opening. And when the key of the disciple's life is attuning itself to that of the hierarchical life, then one by one, the doors will be open and nothing can keep them closed. One of the big keys there is synchronous vibration to that which lies the other side of the door. And I've been told that if you get to the other side and our vibration is off, we basically get kicked out of that level. And I've been told that there's levels so subtle that you really can't even think, or you can't speak, or you'd be kicked out because the vibration changes so quickly. So it's a stabilized thing, and it's an equilibrialized thing. It's a balanced thing, and it's a lot. It proves out our whole life. It really does. And when you look at it like this, in order, your life has to be in such order to keep your vibration stable. It just makes so much sense. And I'm not even talking metaphysically. The outer expression adds up to the inner in this case. Let the disciple tend the evolution of the fire, nourish the lesser lives, and thus, this is rule 4. Let the disciple tend the evolution of fire, nourish the lesser lives, and thus keep the wheel revolving. Here comes an injunction to the disciple to remember his responsibility to those many lesser lives, which in their sum total compose his triple body of manifestation. Now, that's something to contemplate there, right? Remember his responsibility to those many lesser lives, which in their sum total compose his triple body of manifestation. Thus is evolution possible, and thus each life in the different kingdoms of nature, consciously or unconsciously, fulfills its function of rightly energizing that which is to it as the planet is to the sun. Is to it as the planet is to the sun. Thus will the unfolding of the plan will go it proceed with greater accuracy. The kingdom of God is within, and the duty of that inner hidden ruler is twofold. First, to the lives which form the bodies, physical, astral, and mental, and then to the macrocosm, the world of which the microcosm is but an infinitesimal part. Rule 5. Let's go back to rule 4 real quick for a second. I just want to make sure. That's something we need to think about. Rule 5, let the applicant see to it that the solar angel dims the light of the lunar angels, remaining the sole luminary in the microcosmic sky. And this is going to be interesting because, we've talked about, the effects of the moon on the astral body, and it's not, or maybe we haven't. The moon is a shell with no physical plane life, but it's said that it does have some astral effects. And when the sun is reflecting off of it, and it is more powerfully, if it is felt down here low, and it does throw people off balance and affects their emotional state. And then in that we have, lunatics, essentially, where we're unbalanced. All right, so we're in this, we're making sure that the solar angel dims the light of the lunar angels. This is a harsh period, I want to say. That's because, and not for us to be talking about it now, I want to say to be in that period is a battle. There's kind of a battle going on there against the lower nature and the lower thoughts and, you know, the physical body and the desires of it. And to fulfill this injunction, all applicants need to do two things. First, to study their origin, to realize their own true psychological, their own true psychology, occultly understood, and to become scientifically aware of the real nature of the ego or the higher self functioning in the causal body. When they have to assert upon the physical plane through the medium of the three lower bodies, their innate divinity, and to demonstrate in ever-increasing degree their essential value. Secondly, to study the constitution of man, to understand the methods of functioning in the lower nature, to realize the interdependence and the interrelation of all living things, and thus bring the lesser lives which compose those three bodies of manifestation under control. Thus, the solar Lord, the inner reality, the Son of the Father, and the thinker on his own plane becomes the intermediary between that which is of the earth, earthy, and that which finds its home within the sun. Two verses of the Christian Bible hide somewhat of this idea within themselves, and the students of the Occident may find it helpful to meditate upon them. And we are in the Occident. The kingdoms of the world are become the kingdoms of our Lord and of his Christ. O Lord our God, other lords besides thee have had dominion over us, but by thee only will make mention of thy name. The last verse is particularly interesting as it demonstrates the suppression of the lower sound and creative force by that which is of higher origin. See, we don't know anything. We don't know anything. Look at where this is where our minds have to get to in order to really start to understand things. O Lord, our God, other lords besides thee have had dominion over us, but by thee only will we make mention of thy name. And that has something to do. What? Yeah, I just want you to see this real, briefly. This is where we have to get to. This is demonstrates the suppression of the sound, of the lower sound and creative force by that which is of higher origin. You could be dogmatic about just that and run around for an entire life speaking some exoteric expression of these things. See, we don't know anything. We have to stop even. That just alludes to the fact to just stop thinking about anything that we know anything. Know that we know nothing at that point. Rule 6. The purifactory fires burn dim and low when the third is sacrificed to the fourth. Therefore, let the disciple refrain from taking life and let him nourish that which is lowest with the produce of the second. Now, that rule might be summed up in the trite instruction to each disciple that he be strictly vegetarian. And there's definitely a phase where I was a vegetarian, for probably a year, and 2 separate occasions. I think I did 6 or 7 months where I became a vegetarian for a while, it's interesting because it was by impulse. I I didn't do it for, I don't even know why I did it. And I knew I didn't want to eat. I don't know. This is spiritual reasons, right? I knew I didn't want to eat meat for a while, which was really wild, and people threw people off and made them think I'm weird, and it was good. All that's good. This rule might be summed up by the Triton structure. So in rule 5, we were talking about we have to understand our psychology and the constitution of man. That's the chart that we're always referencing, right? In rule 6, we're talking about the third. We're talking about the second, third, and fourth planes on here, which are would here be related to the chakras or the centers, right? So we're talking the planes on the chart, also from the bottom up, are, if you go 7, 6, 5, 4 and on a start like that, those are commensurate with the chakras or the centers, the etheric centers. So this rule might be summed up. All right, so we're vegetarian for a little bit here. Maybe not. The lower nature becomes clogged and heavy, and the inner blaze cannot shine forth when meat is included in the diet. This is a drastic rule for applicants and may not be violated. So if you have the impulse to do this, then you should do it. It's not a forever thing without eating meat. This is for a certain period of time, and just roll with it, because you'll feel, we know this impulse will be there or it won't be there. May have been there a long time ago for you. May have been there in another life. So don't, not something to stress about, when it's there. Aspirants can choose to eat meat or not as they prefer, but at a certain stage upon a path, it is essential that all meat eating of every kind be stopped and the strictest attention be paid to diet. The disciple must confine himself to vegetables, grains, fruits, and nuts. Only thus can he build the type of physical body which can stand the entry of the real man who has stood in his subtler bodies before the initiator. Should he not do this, and should it be possible for him to take initiation without having thus prepared, the physical body would be shattered by the energy pouring through the newly stimulated centers, and dire danger to the brain, the spine, or the heart would eventuate. And this is the process of becoming radiated, grounding that into the body and letting it spread and getting it acclimated, and then getting more irradiated, more illuminated, more radiated, more irradiated, more atomic, more spiritualized. And then the cycle goes. And then it does appear to be the cycle where the springtime comes around, you get more juice, and then you have to ground it, and then it comes around, and then you get more. And this is like, this cycle. And sometimes there's these cycles where you're going to get a big jolt, and this is initiation. When you get a big one. All right, it must, of course, here be recognized that no hard or fast rule can ever be laid down, except the initial one, that for all applicants for initiation, meat, fish, and fermented liquors of all kind, as well as the use of tobacco, are absolutely forbidden. I had not seen that I remember. For those who can stand it, eggs and cheese are sometimes better eliminated from the diet, but this is not in any way compulsory. It is advisable always that those who are in process of developing psychic faculties of any kind should not permit themselves to eat eggs and very little cheese. Milk and butter come under a different category, and most initiates and applicants find it necessary to retain them in the diet. A few exceptional people can subsist and retain their physical energies on the diet mentioned in the preceding paragraph, but there the ideal is embodied, and as we all know, the idea is seldom attainable in the present transitional period. Now, I want to say something real quick, and I don't know if I'm going to remember it right now. Even if you've been through the first initiation, which is, the rebirth, or to be born again, or having gone to Bethlehem, it's important to read all these words and listen to see this, because one, you can see whether you've been through this stage or not, and even more importantly than that, you can help others when you see that they are. So we don't look at these books like, oh, this might be below me. It doesn't. There's nothing that is not a thing. We have to know all of this. Right, so I just wanted to kind of put that out there. Like, oh, we're talking about the first initiation. Well, this is important because this is where probably the most people are at, and we need to help them get there. So this is huge, right? In this connection, two things should be emphasized. First, the need that all applicants have for common sense. This factor is very often lacking, and students do well to remember that unbalanced fanatics are not desirable members of the hierarchy. Got it. That is absolutely makes sense. Equilibrium, a just sense of proportion, a due regard for environing conditions, and a sane common sense are the marks of the true occultist. When a real sense of humor exists likewise, many dangers will be avoided. So that, and they say, don't take yourself so seriously, right? Just relax. This a sense of humor is important because, what else? Just you're going to get the cosmic giggles at times anyway, right? Because there's times where it is funny. Things are funny. Our old behaviors are funny. The things to look back and see the things that we've done, and you have to laugh at yourself at how seriously you took things, because it's so ridiculous sometimes. Secondly, a recognition of time and an ability to move slowly when affecting changes in the diet and in the habits of a lifetime. Everything in nature progresses slowly, and applicants must learn the occult truth of the words, make haste slowly. A process of gradual elimination is usually the path of wisdom, and this eliminating period should, under ideal conditions, which so seldom exist, cover the stage which we call that of the aspirant, so that when a man becomes an applicant for initiation, he will have done the necessary preparation or preparatory purification of the diet. Rule 7, let the disciple turn his attention to the enunciating of those sounds which echo in the halls everywhere, or the halls where walks the master. Let him not sound the lesser notes which awaken vibration within the halls of Maya or illusion. which is where many are. The disciple who seeks to enter within the portals of initiation cannot do so until he has learned the power of speech and the power of silence. Silence. This has a deeper and a wider significance than perhaps is apparent for it holds, if rightly interpreted, the key to manifestation, the clue to the great cycles, and the revelation of the purpose underlying pralaya. Until a man comprehends the significance of the spoken word, and until he utilizes the silence of the high places for the bringing about of desired effects on one plane or another, he cannot be admitted into those realms wherein every sound and every word spoken produces powerful results in matter of some kind, being energized by two predominant factors: A powerful will scientifically applied, and B, right motive purified in the fires. And we talked about this earlier, and we talked about this whole section prior to this about silence and the need for quiet and much more. But we had just mentioned that we can get ourselves kicked out of realms for speaking, for our vibration being off. So that really alludes to the work, to be done. An adept is a creator in mental matter, an originator of impulses on the mental plane, thereby producing results in astral or physical manifestation. These results are powerful and effective, and hence the necessity for their originator to be pure in thought, accurate in word, and skillful in action. When these ideas are realized by applicants, the immediate consequence will be important changes in the life of every day. These changes might, for the sake of their practical use, be enumerated as follows. A, motives will be closely searched and a strict check will be kept upon originating impulses. Hence, during the first year in which the applicant devotes himself to the work of preparation for initiation, he will, 3 times a day, keep a written account of the investigations he pursues, which concern his motives or the mainspring of action. Speech will be watched, and an endeavor will be made to eliminate all unkind, unnecessary, and wasteful words. The effects of the spoken word will be studied and be traced back for those originating impulses, which in every case initiate action upon the physical plane. That's huge. It's eliminate all unkind, unnecessary, and wasteful words. There's no question there, right? Doesn't it not make just so much sense that that's where this goes? Of course it is. And what we look and consider as unkind, unnecessary, and wasteful, that not just the emotional content of that, the use of them and the tones and how they're used and all these things. This takes a little bit. It takes a while to get used to. It's not easy. But when it's run through the fires, that motive, everything does get toned down. It is gradual, but it does happen. It happens. It's amazing how these things fall in line as we're watching it, as we become aware of ourselves and start to understand some basic things. Speech will be watched and endeavor will be to eliminate all kinds of words. The effect of the spoken word will be studied and be traced back to those originating impulses, which in every case initiate action upon the physical plane. And we know that energy follows thought. This is also very important to keep in mind. Silence will be cultivated, and applicants will be careful to preserve strict silence concerning themselves, their occult work or knowledge, the affairs of those associated with them, and the work of their occult group. Only in group circles or in connection with their superiors will a wise latitude in speech be permitted. There is a time to speak. That time comes when the group can be served by wise words. A careful intimation of conditions, good or bad, and a rare but necessary word to some brother concerning the inner life, or to some superior or group of officials, in case where a brother may be hindering a group through error of some kind, or might help the group if put to different work. The effect of the sacred word, D, the effect of the sacred word will be studied, and conditions for its use wisely arranged. The sounding of the word and its effect upon a particular esoteric center, not in any case whatsoever a physical center, will be watched and the life thereby influenced and regulated. The whole question of the study of sound and of words, sacred or otherwise, has to be taken up by applicants for initiation. This is something which must be faced more strenuously by all eventuating occult groups. Okay, Rule 8. When the disciple nears the portal, the greater seven must awaken and bring forth response from the lesser seven upon the double circle. Now, that doesn't sound like something we can understand, right? Well, guess what? We do. We can understand that. And this says this rule is a very difficult one. Well, the greater seven, the seven head centers, and then we have our other centers up and down. So this rule is a very difficult one, and one which holds in it the elements of danger for the man who undertakes too early to tread the final path. Literally, it can be interpreted thus: the would-be initiate must develop somewhat the vibration of the seven head centers, and thus sweep into increased vibratory activity the seven centers in the body upon the etheric plane, affecting also through reciprocal vibration the seven physical centers, which are inevitably stimulated when the etheric centers approach their maximum vibration. It is not to enlarge upon this point beyond pointing out that as the seven centers within the head become responsive to the ego, the following seven centers, the head, considered a unit, the heart, throat, solar plexus, base of the spine, spleen, and organs of generation, are also affected, but affected along the line of purification and control. This will produce results in definitely physical organs through which man functions on the physical plane. In illustration, man can then transfer consciously the creative fire and energy from the organs of generation to the throat, or through the conscious control of the heart, produce suspended animation of the body and produce suspended animation of the body. This is not achieved through what is called hatha yoga practices or concentrating the attention upon the physical organs, but through the development of the control of the inner God who works through the head center and thus dominates all else. Well, that is suspended animation of the physical body is that's deep. I think this probably has many more meanings than what we're considering now. It's alluding to meditation. Just, depends on, there's a difference between being in the heart or in the head or in the throat. I mean, we can potentially go to those centers and into them, and there's a different thing going on in each, essentially. All right. But all these things, if you feel, you may begin to feel these things happening in the head, in the heart. You can, the first place I want to say that many people begin to feel this is right between the eyes, in the ajna center. And you get a slight vibration that starts here. And then you find that when you focus there, it's there, right? But only when you focus at first. And then after a while, it kind of becomes your friend in a strange way, because you want it there. And then it's there more. And then it gets a little more powerful, and it keeps getting stronger. And then next thing you know, things are different. I don't want to get too deep into that. There's no reason. It's different for everybody. Not everybody has the same sensations or experiences, or any at all, in fact. The applicant, therefore, these are good discussions for like a podcast or something, not for serious esoteric study. The applicant, therefore, will bend his energies towards the development of the spiritual life, which will be the outcome of right thinking, meditation, and service. Because like I said, it starts out where this becomes a little part of your life. But if you've listened to many of the yogis or gurus or sages say, it becomes all of your life gradually. And I've witnessed this I remember hearing it for the first time when somebody said, hey, your life will, and it was on YouTube or something, and it said, your life will gradually become, engulfed basically by God, and your thoughts will then become solely focused on this. And at the time I'm going, wow, that's unbelievable. I can't even imagine. And this does happen. That is true. That happens. And it takes, it took some time, and a relatively short amount of time in comparison to what, this whole long path that we're talking about here. But over the course of a number of years, that happened. And, it does become your whole life. And from morning to bed, with few breaks in between where you're not thinking about that, but it's even still always there. You're not thinking about the soul. You're not thinking about the work. You're not thinking about, assimilation or what, all the many things. But it's not like it was before. Through deep study of all there is to be known concerning energy and its focal points, he will coordinate his life so that the life of the spirit may flow through it. This study can only be safely undertaken at present in group work and under the guidance from a teacher. The pupils will pledge themselves to permit no experimentation in their lives and no careless trifling with the fires of the body. They will simply apply themselves to a theoretical comprehension and a life of service. The centers will then develop normally whilst the applicant bends his attention to loving his brother perfectly in truth and in deed, to serving wholeheartedly, to thinking intelligently, and to keeping a close watch upon himself, which you, at some point you can't help, like I want to say all of our faults, as soon as we become aware of this stuff, all of our faults and our weaknesses and our strength, these things become very clear to us quickly. And then whatever faults remain lingering, they linger heavy until we, really work through it. He will also record all that seems to him in his inner life to be concerned with the evolution of the centers. This record can be surveyed by the teacher, comment made, deductions sought, and the quota of information thus gained filed for group reference. In this way, much knowledge can be stored up for use. And I don't keep notes or anything. I take notes sometimes to do a project, but I haven't kept any notes through this. And the reason I haven't kept any notes is because it's all bit, to me, as I see it, these things are all written already. There's nothing new. It's all there to me. Now, this may change, and I've been writing, taking more notes lately, and I've taken a handful, but nothing like this. So it's something to think about. Journal, get a journal, and it may be interesting for you to keep track of your spiritual experiences and meditation, and the feelings of the different chakras coming into play, and the movements of the fire. Every occult or esoteric school teaches to keep a journal, for the most part, I want to say too. The applicant who misuses knowledge, who indulges in such practices as breathing for development or concentrating upon the centers, will inevitably fail in his endeavor to reach the portal, and will pay the price in his body by the appearance of insanity, neurasthenic conditions, and various physical ills. So don't be trying to speed up the growth of certain chakras. It's going to happen naturally as the studying and service is taking place. Now, we've done 8 rules so far. I've got a few things to do, and I think because this is really interesting stuff, and I like talking through this stuff, I'm going to just come back later, hopefully, and finish the rest of these out. And in that, we'll finish the rest of the book out. So break it up. All right. Lots to think about there. This last part here, breathing for development, that's pranayama and these other things. And, don't be trying to do, some Kundalini yoga or something when you're on a different path. We're on, this is deep stuff. If you overstimulate something, it has dire consequences. You could burn yourself out. You do drugs, you can burn yourself out. You can burn right through certain areas of your etheric web, especially when you're on this path. It's not for you anymore. That's the thing. Fine, that we don't bother about other people, but if you recognize this is your path and you're on the path or on it already, those things are not for you anymore. It's that simple. They do not benefit you. They will only do harm. There's no more of that. There's no need for any more of that. So then it's really just, it's a natural working out of the physical and emotional nature, and calming the mind and escaping internally. We're not escaping. We're not using substance to escape anymore. We're escaping to the inner side and meditation, and into the mind, into higher levels of consciousness, not lower. That's what substance does. It's very interesting. So, okay, we'll get into rule 9 a little bit later. Thanks, and see you soon.